Hello, and welcome to the December 15th edition of 2L Pucks Hockey Chat with Scott and Chris. Welcome, everyone. We are live on Periscope. And one thing to cover, which we sometimes forget to mention, is that we are on Twitter at 2L Pucks, Facebook at 2L Pucks Hockey Chat, Periscope here at 2_old_pucks. Our email is 2oldpucks@gmail.com. And of course, everything that we stream here and broadcast here on Periscope, we upload to our official 2L Pucks YouTube channel. So if anyone missed any of that, we do have a scroll at the top of the screen, and that's where you can find us. And we're live every Wednesday and Sunday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Scotty, welcome.
Yeah, I guess happy holidays. We're just 2 weeks away now from Christmas. So things are starting to wind down. Just a couple more games before the roster freeze, which takes place this week.
Yeah.
It's getting down to the wire for the what we would guys call the first half of the season. So again, for anybody that's joined, definitely if you want to talk about something, make comments about something, please throw it up in the Periscope chat, and we'll do our best to acknowledge it. So really appreciate anybody that joins, and feel free to join in the conversation. So first thing I want to say, congratulations to Eric Staal, 1,000 points.
Yeah.
Hit 1,000 points this afternoon.
Yeah.
The guy is only the 89th player in NHL history to hit the 1,000 point milestone. It's good for him. It's good for the sport of hockey. He's now leading Minnesota with 27 points.
Yeah.
He has 7 points in his past 6 games, 4 goals and an assist in his past 3.
Yeah.
And it's just it's incredible for a guy who just last year, people were talking about whether or not he was on the decline. And so, for Staal, he was a mainstay in Carolina, went to Minnesota. They thought he was going to do some really good things. Didn't quite live up to what they thought the potential was going to be there. But man, he come on in Minnesota of late.
Yeah.
And the Minnesota's on fire. They are.
Well, they have they're doing pretty well right now. I mean,
they're like the hottest team since November.
Well, I mean, we could
record-wise, they won just 6 of their first 18 games.
Yeah,
they're 10-1-4 in their last 15, 12-3-5 in their past 20. I mean, they are record-wise, they're the hottest team in the NHL since November.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't want to, I'm hesitant to move forward past the Eric Staal story because I think that's an enormous milestone to achieve.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was kind of unsure whether or not we should just jump right into that with Minnesota. I mean, listen, Minnesota's, well, first of all, let's say congratulations to Eric Staal. And I think that was great that we brought that up and obviously identified that. That's a huge milestone. So great guy, great player, and a great milestone. So great way to start the broadcast here. I think with if we move forward to Minnesota, listen, they're fifth in the Central Division, right? Their last 10, they're 7-1-2. They're on a 2-game win streak. Are they the hottest team in hockey? Are they having the best? Are they having the best streak of their season so far? Yes.
Since November.
Yeah.
Since November 14th, the Wild ranked first in the NHL with 24 points.
You know what? I'm not going to acknowledge these little time spans that you throw out there. If you don't acknowledge when the power rankings come out and the Islanders are identified as the number 1 team in hockey based on time spans, but you can't identify those time spans, but you can identify Minnesota Wild as the hottest team in hockey. I'm going to call you out on it.
You can call me out on it. You can call me out as much as you want. I gave them credit when they were on that point streak. But the long and short of it is Eric Staal has helped to lead.
Yes, he has.
The Minnesota team, Minnesota Wild. And here's what's really here's what's really interesting, and this is why I think it's important to point out Minnesota. One, because it's a team. It's on the West Coast. The
Right.
media and fans pretty much have this, what you would consider to be an East Coast bias. So I think it's important. We kind of spread the wealth around. The other thing is too, they started off, like I said, six of their first 18 games they lost. Right. Like I think it's important to. I mean, Bruce Boudreau was on the hot seat, and he's been on the hot seat every season.
Right.
Everybody's like, oh, Bruce Boudreau, was with the Capitals, powerhouse, went to the Wild, and every year seems we have the same conversation that is Boudreau going to last? And you start looking at it, and beginning of the season, you would have thought there's no way this guy is going to make it to Christmas.
Right.
And yet, they're getting goaltending, they're getting scoring, they're spreading it out. They're 9-0, and so for home records, they're 9-0-3 in their past 12 games at Xcel Energy Center. Only Boston and the Islanders have longer home point streaks.
Right.
I mean, and so again, they're doing well on home ice. And the other funny thing is too, I read a statistic today that says they've played more than half of their away games, and we're not even a third of the way through the season yet.
Yeah. That's a huge plus for them for sure. I think what I'm looking at here is they're in a division, right? Obviously with they have Colorado, right? Colorado's 8-1-1. They got Winnipeg, who's 7-2-1 in their last 10. Some strong teams. St. Louis, obviously 6-3-1. There's some strong teams doing some strong things at the same time that they are. So, listen, I'm glad that they're, having a good little streak, but they got to be careful here. And if you look at who's doing the work, you have Eric Staal with 25 points, Zucker with 23 points, Parisi with 19, Ryan Suter with 19, and all these guys are in negatives also. Stahl's a -6, Zucker's a -3, Parisi's a -10. They're heading in the right direction. I think, when you add Koivu back into the mix, since he's been back off injury, you're producing and you're putting on the ice some pretty solid line combos, right? So we have top line, Zucker, left wing, Staal, and Zuccarello. That's their top line. And some people be like, okay, sounds good, but then if you go to Parisi on the second with Fiala and Donato, okay, good second line, right? And then you have what might be considered a little bit of a sketchy third line with Greenway, Kunin, and Hartman, and a fourth line of Foligno, Rask, and Mayhew. So, is the depth there to continue with this? It's. I don't know. I'm on the fence with them. Listen, I think over time I've never really been against them. I've never really been for. It's one of those teams that if they're doing well, yeah, I'll watch their games. I watch all games, but I used to steer more toward a Minnesota Wild game, like the organization, like the the history of the players that are there and so on. But I don't know if this one can be, which direction they're going. Are they going to go up? Are they going to go down? Are they going to ride the middle?
Let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at their schedule of late, right? So if you take a look at the teams that they've beaten, so in November they beat Arizona, they beat Colorado, they took Boston to overtime. That's back in November. December they beat Dallas in a shootout. They beat Tampa. They beat Edmonton. So I mean, these aren't scrub teams. They're good teams that are playoff contenders that they're able to sustain. So again, I just you don't know where it's going to go. Bruce Boudreau has this history of doing really well in the regular season, and then just the teams fall apart in the postseason. As you pointed out, there's a lot of hockey left to play, but I think it's a good thing for the team to be on the streak that they're on, or maybe not so much a streak, but be on the trajectory that they're on, and see how far they can carry it.
It's nice to see some good guys and a good team going in the right direction. That's what it comes down to. Yep. I think it's a feel-good story for right now, and everyone is like, okay, good, they're turning around the ship, and it's almost like if all of a sudden Detroit went on a run, So I get it. I'm there with you. I hope they can sustain it. Again, I don't know what else to say to it. It's one of those things.
It's good. It's
What's
good.
That?
No, it's just good. And I think, when you have, I think there's going to be some things they're going to look back on in this season, and they're going to, this is a high point, along with Eric Staal hitting that 1,000-point milestone. So again, really want to point that out and say, hey, good for him, good for Minnesota, good for his teammates. Well-deserved recognition for him hitting that 1,000 points.
Let me throw this at you, okay? Because I don't want to diminish the story. I think the story it's definitely worth talking about because they have worked hard to get to this point, right? What do you think they need to do in order to continue the upward trend?
Well, I think I think with the roster that they have, I think they've got to tighten up on the back end. I think goaltending has finally, it's
Kakkinen and Staal
kicked in. Yep, I think it's kicked in.
Well, is it kicked in? I don't mean to. I'm not trying to bombard you with it, but is it that the goalies have kicked in, or is it that the defense, as you just mentioned, is tightened up?
I think it's a combination of both. To be honest with you, Devin Dubnyk is out with there's a family illness. Yeah. Koivu has been injured. Spurgeon's out. Yeah. So again, they're finding ways to win, like a lot of teams in the NHL are. Yeah. And so that's what makes the story, even better is that you have a team that's, looking good. I mean, and here's the thing, it's they just played Philadelphia, and now granted, Philadelphia has seen some issues of their own of late, and so. In that game against Philly went down 2 centers, but they kept Philadelphia down to 18 shots.
Right.
I mean, so they've locked it up on the back end. The goalies are starting to pick it up. I mean, and that's what a team needs to do to be successful.
Yeah.
So
I got you.
If they can just,
I think
they can
combined with the
maintain
injuries. I mean, you look like you said, with Dubnyk out, Koivu out, Spurgeon out. Those are solid guys. They bring the depth that power. Koivu on the first power play unit for sure. Also injecting him into the center of like the second line that would push Donato down to the centering the third line. The depth is just missing due to the injuries. Bottom line. Spurgeon also. I mean, it'd be great to have him back. So we'll see. Hopefully they keep going in the right direction there. Yep.
And currently that game against Chicago is still ongoing.
Yeah.
Looks like 10 minutes left in the third, and the score is tied 3-3.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that shakes out, and maybe we'll see 1,001 points tonight for Eric Staal.
So I got a little story for you.
All right.
And you'll see how this segues in to our next story.
I hope so. All
right.
Yeah.
So I'm watching my my Islanders the other day. I'm sorry. It was an afternoon game.
Forgive the eye roll. Yeah.
And the playing a strong game, and Buffalo is playing a strong game also. It was both teams were playing pretty strong, and it was a fun game to watch. Both teams had opportunities. Both teams were playing well. And Islanders are up 2-1. And going into the third period, and the third period's winding down, and Buffalo's making a push, and they get down to, I forget where it was, maybe 2 minutes left in the game. And it was a penalty against the Islanders. So Buffalo had the power play, and then they pulled the goalie with like a minute left. So it's 6-on-4, right? And Buffalo throws the puck at the net. And of course, the puck bounces out to the left side of the crease, and who's there but Mr. Eichel?
Jack Eichel.
Yes, Mr. Jack Eichel, who then quickly backhands it into the net, just beating the Islanders goalie, and scores a goal, ties it up at 2-2. And at that point, I'm almost throwing things at the TV and cursing Mr. Eichel. And, obviously I'm cursing him, not just for that moment, but because I've watched the highlights over the past couple weeks, just building, praying that the Islanders are going to be shutting this guy down for this game at this moment. And I shouldn't really say that because he did have an assist already earlier in the game, so to continue his point streak. But to then have that goal at that moment, I wanted to reach through the TV and just strangle him, right? So it's 2-2. End of regulation. They go into overtime, and of course the Islanders win on a beautiful Beauvillier breakaway, and just a beautiful move, and Beauvillier really just brought it home for the Islanders. So it was a really, really great game to watch, very intense. But let's talk about Mr. Eichel.
All right. I mean, yeah.
This SOB, I'm sorry, this guy.
It's all right.
This guy leads the Buffalo Sabres with 48 points, 23 goals, 25 assists, and he's a plus 14, right? Yep. And it seems to be rare to be seeing such high plus ratings in this season. But good for him. He's a plus 14. Overall, the Buffalo team at large is in the a lot of positives, which is good to see for them.
Next gotten points in 11 out of their points in their last 11 out of 16 games.
Yep.
And they've won 4 of 7 since the beginning of the month.
Yep. And
not only winning 4 of 7, but they've gotten points in 6 of the 7 games since December. So
yep.
Yeah.
They're a plus 4 goal differential. So this team has just been. It's one of those things where they've been kind of going up and down, and then they go a little bit more. It's almost like now they're in a 2 steps forward, 1 step back mode, and then 2 steps forward. So they're slowly climbing, and they're looking stronger as the season goes on. And I think they're going to continue with that pattern. They're really playing well together. They're really gelling. Their lines look good. I mean, one line after another as they rotating lines throughout the evening against through the afternoon against the Islanders. It was just a steady stream of opportunities for both teams, and that's a credit to the Sabres. They just look strong.
So I think it's interesting too. So let's just come out and say that the Atlantic Division sucks. So there's 9 points separating Boston and Buffalo, the same games played. It goes from 48 to 39 with Buffalo in second place. So, I think the point difference between second and sixth, which is Buffalo down to Florida, is only 4 points.
Right.
So I think, the Atlantic Division, Boston's obviously going to run away with that. I mean, they're going to clinch, long before I think any other teams are. But I think that Buffalo is one of those teams that, if they can continue and Eichel can continue doing what he's doing, really it's kind of up for grabs. But this is another great example of when you have to bank points every time you can. And because I think the Atlantic, while they suck, it's everybody sucks. And I think that they're going to end up having to just bank as many points as they can. So, but let's get back to Eichel again before we really get back to Buffalo. So Jack Eichel is on a 16-game point streak. It's so far the longest in the NHL this season.
Yep.
So in that 16-game,
what was Kane's?
Kane was 15 games. He had 24 points, 11 goals, 13 assists.
Yeah.
Eichel has 29 points, 15 goals, and 14 assists in the 16-game point streak. Right? It's tied for the 4th longest in Sabres history. I mean, and the Sabres have been around for a long time. So, he's also now, of course, with if he gets 2 points in a game or 1 point in a game or 3 points in a game, the pace is going to change. I think the last thing I read was 110-point pace. But let's just back that up and say he's one of 10 players in the NHL that's on pace to get 100, if not more, 100 points, if not more. That's awesome. That's great. Jack Eichel, for a long time, people were wondering if he was going to be able to step up, and I think he's arrived. I think he's a leader in Buffalo. And again, I think they've what they've done recently, this string of games. Hopefully, it doesn't turn out to be like last season, where they went on that run and fans thought it was going to be the best thing ever, and holy cow, we're going to win a Stanley Cup, and then they fell apart. So,
well, I brought up the Buffalo Sabres line combo, and he's arrived for sure, because I think he's playing obviously with more confidence. He looks more composed. He looks much more mature just in how he presents and conducts himself on the ice, and not as emotional. You would see him getting swinging one way or the other, but he is emotional after he scores, which is obviously a great thing. But he just seems more composed, just a bit more mature, and it's nice to see that in a player like himself. But is there something to say about the line combos? Is it something to say about the chemistry on the top line between Olofsson and Reinhart? There's some consistency in some of the matchups we're seeing here. Then you get the second line of Vesey, Johansson, and Asplund. And then you have Skinner, Rodriguez, and Sheary, and Gergensons, Larson, and Okposo on the fourth line. But I think there's a definite, you could see a definite chemistry there with his lines. They just look good. They look good. I don't know how else to say it. That you can watch a game and you see lines for any teams coming out, and you're like, okay, not much is happening there or whatever. But you can tell when these guys are just gelling, even if they're not putting the puck in the net. You could see they're backhanding passes because they know the guy's there. They're covering each other. It's naturally covering each other. I mean, it's nice to see, and you could see that with this line. With this top line of Buffalo. So kudos to them in figuring that out. I just, for their sake, I hope it continues.
Well, they're definitely fans in Buffalo are they're watching good hockey, especially at home. Buffalo's 10-3-3 on home ice. Not as good on the road, but again, if you can pick up the points, you pick up the points everywhere you can. And so that means, winning at home. It's good. But again, Jack Eichel, highlight reels. I mean, the guy is just, he's on a streak, and I hope it continues.
Yeah. Same here.
Again,
he's fun to watch. He's definitely fun to watch. It was impressive watching him play. He definitely, it's nice seeing someone with his skills playing with the confidence that he's playing with right now. So
absolutely.
Kudos to him.
Absolutely. Definitely. Just want to remind everybody who's tuned in, if you've got any comments, please feel free to join in the conversation. Post them in the Periscope. We'll take a look at them and respond if anybody has any comments or questions or wants to critique. We're certainly open to that. So while we're talking about New York, I want to move a little further south in the state and just kind of throw this a little bit of hockey trivia out there. So this date in history, the NHL in 1925, the NHL makes its debut in New York City when the first year New York Americans play their first home game at the brand new Madison Square Garden. So it's 1925. They had a crowd of 17,000. And what was interesting here, and a huge change from games that you go to now, and the way you see fans dressed, the first hockey game at the arena was basically a high society affair. So get this: the lower bowl was filled with men in tuxedos and women in evening gowns and furs. Now, I got to tell you, I've been going to games for a long time. If I saw somebody show up in a tuxedo or an evening gown, I I'd probably point them out and just point and laugh at them the entire time. Clearly, the times have changed. Fans are there representing their favorite teams, but that's kind of funny that a sporting event would be attended by folks wearing tuxedos and evening gowns. But again,
well, was it more? Were they attending in that attire to celebrate the game, or more to celebrate, as you mentioned, the opening of the venue?
I mean, I think it was sold a particular way. I mean, we're talking 1925. There's obviously a difference in the way people think, with the way things have been done. So, going out, hockey game, whatever the case may be, was obviously, seen as a night out. And so that's what people were doing. So, but again, I thought it was interesting. 1925, the first NHL game at Madison Square Garden, which is, cool. It's a hockey, sanctuary, if you want to call it that, or so pretty good stuff there.
Definitely, sir. I'd like to touch on a little bit of fantasy hockey. I don't like too much time to go by in between discussing some of it, but I think what we could do is go through maybe the some of the top transaction trends as of today. And if we look according to Yahoo Fantasy, and we look at who's at the top of the list, Mr. Tyler Toffoli, with 99 drops, but 5,517 ads. Now, typically, for a player to have that many ads in fantasy, and I'm looking, that means either they're coming off of an injury, and it's a decent player coming off an injury being inserted back into a line, or it's a player that's on a line who's been promoted to a nice pairing with somebody on the top line. But if I look at the LA Kings line pairings, Tyler Toffoli's playing right wing on the fourth line. So I'm a little curious here. I'm a little unsure. And if I dig a little deeper into some of the description here.
Well, I mean, I'll just throw it out there. As of Monday, December 9th, he hadn't scored a point in 9 games. I
hear you. But
and then on the 10th against the Rangers, he puts up 2. He puts a goal and an assist. The 12th against Anaheim, 2 assists. The 14th against Pittsburgh, goal and an assist. Today, he's put up another goal, right? So this is to me, what's going on here, what's happened here with Toffoli, because we're talking about it's Los Angeles. I mean, again, it's bottom. But what I see, though, is people adding a player who has gotten hot of late, and they're trying to cash in.
We're talking about 5,517 fantasy leagues.
Agreed.
Where someone is grabbing Tyler Toffoli, the right wing fourth line for the LA Kings, and adding him to their roster. Yeah. Now, the only thing that comes to mind here is that we're dealing with some very large fantasy leagues, like 16 teams maybe. And they have, you're digging deep for players here,
Sure.
Otherwise, I think it's risky to give up something for a guy like that. I don't see it. Let's
think about it. How many leagues was he available in to pick up?
That's the whole point.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's really what you gotta focus on is. So again, another player, and we'll come back, but just for an example, is Tristan Jarry for the Penguins, right? Yeah. He's available in over 50% of the leagues. He's basically now the starting goaltender for the Pittsburgh Penguins, right? And so he's just out there, and people are now picking him up because of late he's been getting the starts and he's been getting the wins. So I just kind of look at that and I know people I've played in fantasy leagues where, I'm running short on goals. I need to see who's scored a lot of goals, and the person just happens to be out there. They're trending, and that's that's why they get picked up. So
I hear you.
yeah,
Obviously it all comes down to the criteria of the league and what scoring columns that league has chosen to prioritize, for their league. So, Robbie Fabry's on this list.
okay,
And we touched on him. If Detroit's going to be moving in any positive direction, I singled him out as being one of the guys, along with Larkin. And Fabry is now in a position where he has 2,461 ads. And if we look at what he's been doing lately, we have a couple goals, couple assists over his last 10. There's starting to be a little bit of a pattern here with him. I think I have this strange feeling with Detroit that they are going to turn it around.
okay,
And that you're going to see a good little patch of play from them, and they're going to surprise some teams. They're not going to make the playoffs. There's no way. But you're going to see a patch where they're going to surprise. They'll make a couple highlight reels, but they're not going to be the joke of the league for the entire season. I think they'll get out of the basement, and then have a little bit of a respectable, second half. But I think Fabry's going to be one of those guys that helps lead that team out of there.
okay, yeah. No, I mean, I'm looking. So there's, one of the other names that kind of popped out for me on there. Again, with these ads, you have Anthony Duclair, right?
Yeah.
So Duclair plays for Ottawa, and Ottawa is not exactly tearing it up.
No,
but again, here's a guy who, against Columbus put up 3 goals.
Yep.
Against Boston put up 2, against Philly put up 2. So again, I kind of look at, he's got 14 goals in 22 games since November 1st. Right now, only Jack Eichel, David Pastrnak of Boston, Sebastian Aho of Carolina have scored more than Duclair over that span.
And you look at who he's playing with. He's playing second line right wing with Nemestikov and Tierney.
Yeah.
So,
but it's Ottawa, which, by the way, knocked the
Right.
snot out of Columbus the other day. So again, I think that was I think that was a quirk, but I just, again, I take a look at a lot of these transactions, these trends, and I think people are just, they're picking up players where they have need.
It's got to be some deep leagues. These are guys that are showing signs of life, and people are just dumping and picking up anyone on a slightly positive trend. I think it's risky when you do this when you don't see any consistency. I mean, a little streak is not a sign of consistency. A little streak is a little streak, and I think you're going to need more than the 5 to 10 day litmus test before I go dropping a guy that has proven himself for like 2 months.
But this is coming from a guy who would pick up and drop players daily. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So,
well,
it just depends on the league. It depends on the scoring.
That was
just
going to say.
Yeah.
The terms of a league is what determines it for sure. But yeah, it's tough to comment on something like that. But I appreciate you bringing that up.
Hey, that's my pleasure. No, hey, so again, I think again, we just use Yahoo just because it's easy to reference. But as we say every time, fantasy hockey is a great way to kind of get into the sport. It really keeps you focused, helps you watch teams and see what they're doing, lineups, and really gives you a stake in the game, especially if you've got money on it. So,
what is your opinion of those people who are playing fantasy who don't commit to a goalie but add and drop based on who's getting the start just so they can meet their goalie start requirements in the league?
So
or to get more goalie starts in order to win the goalie start category in the league.
So I see a couple different ways you can do this. So with goalies, uh, there are teams that will, or players, fantasy players that will pick the starting goalie and the backup goalie from one team.
Right.
And if there's two slots, they'll throw them in there and they'll never move them. Right. And it's really just to, as you said, meet the minimum requirement. Again, it really depends on what you're trying to get out of it. Are you trying to win in all categories? Are you just trying to win the league? I guess you could call me old fashioned. I kind of like the, trying to put a team together and hold on to them. But again, when I play fantasy football, I'll drop a defense and pick a new one up every week based on who the opponent is.
See, I guess what I'm asking is, should the goalie start category exist in fantasy hockey?
Yes.
Okay.
And so this is the reason why, and I'll explain to you why.
Okay. All right.
So if you have a goalie who comes in and plays and has one game that whole week, and he gets a shutout. So his goals against average is 100%, zero. Save percentage is 100%, shutout category, all that stuff. That's 3 or 4 categories that if there's no, if that's all you have, it's impossible for your opponent to counter that.
Yes, no, you're wrong, because you just said if he has one game in the week and he gets a shutout,
and there's no minimum starts,
have a minimum goalie start requirement of 2, 3, or 4 starts.
So, but to answer your question though, if there are no minimum start requirements,
I don't know. You know what? I hear what you're saying, but I can't. As far as being part of fantasy team, I mean, have you ever been part of a league where there's been a 0 minimum on a goalie start?
Negative. No, never.
Yeah, me either. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but usually it's going to be 2, 3, or 4 starts. I get your point, but I think the reality or the majority of instances is going to be something where you're going to have a multiple start league, multiple goalie start leagues. Say, let's just take 3, right? And now I think what's nice about the strategy is you go in picking, you go, especially if we're dealing with a league, a fantasy league like Yahoo, where you're not picking goalie tandems, you're picking individual goalies, right? So you pick your starting goalie, you pick your secondary goalie, and now you're in a good spot. Now, what a lot of people do is they'll grab a third goalie just for kicks, right?
Sure.
And they'll have that third goalie. But a lot of times, by the time you get to that third goalie is backup for some team anyway, right? So if you do get to use that third goalie, you'll get that goalie start category boosted up. But that's the only real reason you'll get the shots against, you'll get the saves, you'll get those categories bumped up a little bit. I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on that, because then he takes up a slot even though you're not going to use him that much. So now you have a slot in your roster that's going toward a third goalie that's maybe not going to be effective all the time. I don't know. I've always looked at fantasy hockey being a reflection of what's really happening in hockey. And that goalie start one kind of drives me a little nutty. I mean, there's really, the only value it carries is in fantasy. I mean, other than that, it's like, well, how does that translate over to real world hockey? I mean, there's no, I don't know. I don't see it. After you have your top 2 goalies, I think that category should be kind of nixed. And then if you don't have that, then the goalie start minimum can go away. And then you can start weighing the goalie performances in a way like you mentioned. If your team does have one start, because every team goes through that span somewhere in the middle of the season where they have like a week where they play one game.
Sure.
Right? And then you're kind of screwed. Now, how is that fair in fantasy? You have those weeks where you have one game, you have your 2 goalies, right? And maybe you are a player. Maybe the way you play your fantasy team is you do pick both goalies from the same team. I've done that before. I don't do it all the time, but I've done it before. And then you come across those breaks where your team has one game, and now all of a sudden you gotta mix up your roster in order to acquire a third goalie who's probably a backup guy, just so you can get the start to meet the minimum, and you lose a guy that maybe was productive as a skater. So that's not realistic, and that drives me a little nutty.
All right. Let's kick the soapbox out from underneath you there.
Oh boy.
No, I'm with you. I hear you. I think it's just part of the game, and unfortunately, as we've discussed in the past, sometimes it's impossible for a computer-generated league to simulate reality. You're not making points that I disagree with. I just think that I don't know that we're going to get to a point in playing fantasy hockey like that to where you're going to be able to overcome something like that. So again, I hear you. It's good points.
The only way you can overcome it is if the league manager just designs the categories against that. So you put the league manager puts in zero minimums with and chooses not to include the goalie start category.
Oh, that's true. But again, why wouldn't I, if I have a goalie who gets a shutout first game of the week, and then I don't dress any goalies for the rest of the week, it's impossible for the opponent to counter that. They've won those categories.
Well, no. I'm just talking about the goalie start. You're talking about the categories, which would be save percentage and
But that's my point. Is
and goals against average. But that's the only two categories. You still have shots. You still have saves.
That's true, but I'm looking at
those are real stats.
I'm looking at guarantees. I'm looking at guarantees on those points as opposed to the.
That's fine. You deserve it.
Well,
you got a shot.
I guess
you deserve it.
I'll disagree with you on that. Anyway, let's move.
No. This is a good conversation. Why you listen? You deserve the save percentage. You deserve the goals against average, but then the category there's other goalie categories that are much more real than winning a category just based on sheer starts. You can have shots against, saves. You absolutely can have those categories in there that you could counter if your team doesn't have a shutout.
I understand. I'm saying that each statistical category, because there are some leagues where you get points for winning each category, and there are some leagues where you get points for winning all of the categories. In other words, it's a win or a loss.
Right.
So I think it all depends on what you sign up for. So
yeah.
Speaking of goalies,
all right.
So great way to segue. I'm just going to throw this out there. So Frederik Andersen and Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
They beat the now I think 4 straight loss Edmonton Oilers. Yeah. He got his 200th win.
Yeah.
In the NHL. And so good for Frederik Andersen. Yeah. So it's good to good to see that. Yeah. So he's 4th fastest in NHL history. Wow. Only Ken Dryden, Braden Holtby, and Jacques Plante earned their 200th win in fewer games.
Wow.
So so good for him.
Impressive.
Yeah. And again, along with the Oilers, who started 8-2-1. The season started 8-2-1, and they've lost 4 straight and 7 in their past 9.
Right.
And so they're trending the wrong way. So I think the Christmas break is going to come at a good time for them, and hopefully they can do something to overcome that.
Yeah.
So. Just a couple other odd tidbits that I picked out. Mm-hmm. So the Flyers have announced that Oscar Lindblom is diagnosed with Ewing's sarcoma, which is a rare type of bone cancer, and he's out for the rest of the season. Right. So best wishes to him. Yeah. Hope he's able to get better. Right now concentrate on getting better as opposed to when he's going to return. But big blow to Philadelphia, big blow to the league, because again, the league is only great when the best players are playing.
Yeah.
So you hope he comes back.
Yeah.
Last little tidbit I want to throw out there, which I think we have to because it's the elephant in the room, is Taylor Hall. So Taylor Hall was scratched 2 games in a row for precautions. He was scratched in Colorado and Arizona. Colorado, which everybody was sure he was going to be traded to Colorado because he made the trip, and then didn't get traded. And then they played in Arizona, and he was held out, didn't get traded to Arizona. So, so right now it's looking like potentially the Coyotes are the favorite, maybe. But the funny thing is, like, this is interesting. In December, this just doesn't happen. And what does it do to Taylor Hall, right? So, he's a guy that, could certainly help the Devils. There's no reason for him not to play, but yet they're holding him out. And then, their next game is on Wednesday against Anaheim. I mean, are they just going to hold him out again? So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? I'm kind of getting sick of this at this point in time because it's been taking over. Highlights, or not even highlights, headlines, Twitter, Facebook, all the social media. Everybody knows what's going to happen, and then doesn't happen. So, I wish Taylor Hall the best as he waits his fate. And the funny thing is too, I think his agent is overseas and has not been involved in any of the trade negotiations. And right now, teams aren't even allowed to talk to the agent or the player to discuss extensions. So right now, whatever team gets him, they're going to get him for his current contract, and then there's no guarantee that he's going to re-sign. So we'll see what happens.
Interesting. I know. I was unsure whether or not to touch on it because there's just so much speculation out there. But
yeah, it's kind of one of those things. It's like watching the train wreck, So. Yeah.
Wanted to definitely get into some scores. Wrapping up this evening, you touched on the Flyers. Flyers got waxed by the Jets, 7-3 final. Jets just dismantling the Flyers. The Wild, our hottest team in the NHL, lost to the Blackhawks 5-3. So they're starting to cool down already.
One game, sure, yeah.
And the Kings over the Red Wings 4-2. So that's the finals for this evening. And we are currently at the end of the second period with the Golden Knights leading the Canucks 4-1.
Yep.
That's a healthy lead going into a third period. So we'll see how that plays out. But getting into Monday, December 16th, tomorrow, we have the Senators at the Panthers. And these teams are pretty close. Senators with 14 wins, Panthers with 15 wins. It's in Florida. How you
Divisional game?
How you looking at this one?
Divisional game. Despite Ottawa having won recently, I think that because it's in Florida, Florida's been pretty good at home, 9-7-2. Right. They've lost 3. I think they're due for a win, and so I'm going to go with the Panthers on this one.
I'm going to go with the Senators on this one.
All right.
I'm going to go with the Sens. Predators at the Rangers. At the Garden. There are people going to be in tuxedos and fur coats there.
That would be funny. So I believe Nashville got booed off the ice by their own fans of late. So they've certainly got something to prove, how the mighty have fallen since their Stanley Cup run not too long ago.
Yeah.
They are 6th in their division, 6th of 7, and they trail by 13 points for first place St. Louis. So they've got a lot of ground to make up.
A lot. Yes.
The Rangers, I think the Rangers certainly want to make a push, but I think it's understood that they are in I don't want a rebranding phase, I guess if you want to call it, maybe not a rebuild, but a rebranding. it's at the Garden. They're playing. They're 8-6-2 at home. So I think it'll be interesting. I'm hoping Nashville's going to go in there ticked off. I'm hoping it's going to be a good game. I'm going to go with Nashville.
Yeah. Rangers, I think, are just starting to count on and starting to look at Philly and Pittsburgh to secure the wild card, spots based on where they are. I don't know how realistic it is for them to lock down a playoff position. So I think they're fighting to stay in it. They're currently with 36 points, with the two teams ahead of them for the wild card spot being Philly and Pittsburgh. Philly with 39 points and Pittsburgh with 42. I could see them possibly catching Philly. I don't know if they're going to catch Pittsburgh, but they're starting to really tick with some line combos, and some players are starting to really become hot. But as an Islander fan, I'm sworn to root for the other team. So I'm going to be rooting for the Predators, but I think the Rangers are going to take it at home.
Okay.
It's a Rangers game at home. So just the same way the Islanders are strong at the barn at the Coliseum, the Rangers tend to be pretty strong at home also. The New York crowd has a way of really motivating.
So it's interesting you pointed out about the Rangers, and honestly, the Rangers, Toronto, and Tampa Bay being able to catch Philadelphia. So Pittsburgh is going to get players back. I mean, let's be honest. Pittsburgh is playing. They're a really good AHL team right now. Yeah. Pittsburgh is. They've been getting some great goaltending. Fortunately, they're fairly healthy on the back end, but they are a really good AHL team. But they're going to get players back in the lineup. Players like Sidney Crosby, players like Evgeny Malkin, who was out for the last 2 games of the flu. So they're going to get guys back, and I think that they're going to continue to win. They're going to continue to rack up points. Philadelphia, on the other hand, they're starting to see some injuries, and so I think that this is the time when the Rangers, the Maple Leafs, and even Tampa Bay and Florida have an opportunity to gain some ground on Philly. So we'll see how that goes. But
yeah. So, all right, moving forward, Capitals at the Blue Jackets.
Again, Washington is on a 2-game winning streak. The Blue Jackets just lost to Ottawa. Earlier in the week, they lost to a very depleted Pittsburgh Penguins team. So I can't see an outcome here really where the Capitals don't take this one.
Yeah. It's just David and Goliath with this one. Capitals, absolutely. A very good game tomorrow night. I think this is the one that I'm going to be watching. We have the Avalanche and the Blues. That is going to be something.
That's going to be a great game. There was discussion where Colorado was potentially going to be in the running for Taylor Hall. I still don't think they're out of it. But certainly Colorado is a +31 goal differential. That's incredible. They're 8-1-1 in their last 10. They've won 2 in a row.
Yeah. This is going to be a good game, man. This is the battle. This is the battle for first place.
This is a Western Conference. This is top. So right now, St. Louis is 46 points. The Colorado's 45. Yeah. And I think it's going to be a great game.
I don't know, man. That's flip a coin, right?
I'm going to go with Colorado. I think Colorado's got the possibility, the ability to win this
game, though, for the Blues, man. Neutral site, I'd go Colorado. At home for the Blues.
Hey, maybe they'll crank.
So good,
maybe they'll crank
man.
Gloria up.
Colorado's looking so good. I'm going to go with Colorado in overtime. I'm going to call that one. I can't see that being a regulation win. It's got to be like an overtime or a shootout. But I'm definitely going to be watching that game tomorrow. That's going to be a fun one. Oilers at the Stars.
So Dallas is 5-3-2 in their last 10. Edmonton's 3-6-1. We talked a little bit earlier. Edmonton's now lost 4 in a row. I really don't see that skid ending against Dallas. Dallas is a good team. They just came off of a win. I think Dallas is going to take it to Edmonton. I think they're going to take that game out. And right now, Dallas is in the first wild card spot with 42 points. Edmonton is leading the division. Or I'm sorry, leading second place in the division with 40 points. So yeah, I mean, I think it'll be. I really don't have any doubts. I think Dallas is going to take it.
Yeah, Dallas is has a +10 goal differential, and they have a very strong home record. The game is in Dallas, so their home record is 12-4-2. You look at Edmonton; they have a -3 differential, and their away record is a good one. It's well, I guess for an away record, it's decent, 10-7-1. But sure. I just don't think they're going to overcome the their goals against issues to do anything to really stop the Dallas offense. I think Dallas is going to take that game at home. There's just too much in Dallas's favor. Edmonton's
goaltending has basically been non-existent of late. They started off really, really well, and it's just fallen apart for them. So, no longer can that offense, really carry the game and relying on the goalies to make saves. So until their goaltending gets shored up, I don't think that skid's going to stop for Edmonton.
Yeah. All right. That is a wrap, sir. A little bit longer of a broadcast than I think, but maybe I rambled a little bit too much in the fantasy stuff.
maybe.
But excellent. I think. Is there anything else you'd like to add for the evening?
No. I mean, we obviously, like I said, we have the roster freeze coming up this week. So hopefully we'll get some resolution on Taylor Hall, so we can get that. Move on from that topic, and we'll see what happens if there's any more movement before the end of the week.
So. Sounds good, sir. All right. Well, that's going to be a wrap for this evening. We thank you very much for joining the 2 Old Pucks live Periscope broadcast. Once again, you can catch us on Twitter, Facebook, Periscope, YouTube, all under 2 Old Pucks. Or you can email us at 2oldpucks@gmail.com. But we will be back on Wednesday, the 18th. And we'll see you then at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We thank you very much for joining us. And as always, we hope you have a great night.
Yep. Thanks.